Chloe Bennett smoothed down her emerald dress one last time before entering Celestial, the upscale restaurant where her blind date awaited. Her best friend Nina had insisted she give dating another chance, practically pushing her out of their apartment with encouraging words signed rapidly in American Sign Language. Chloe had reluctantly agreed, though her past experiences with hearing men had left scars deeper than anyone could see. The hostess smiled warmly and guided her to a corner booth where a man in an expensive suit sat scrolling through his phone. Brandon Walsh looked up, and Chloe caught the flicker of surprise in his eyes before he masked it with a practiced smile. She knew that look well. It was the moment people realized she was deaf. Chloe slid into her seat and pulled out her phone, typing quickly. "Hi, I'm Chloe. Nice to meet you." She showed him the screen, watching his expression carefully. Brandon nodded, setting his phone face down on the table. He spoke without looking directly at her, his lips moving in a way that made reading them nearly impossible. Chloe had spent years perfecting her lip-reading skills, but it required the speaker to face her and articulate clearly. Brandon did. "Neither," she typed again. "I'm deaf. I need you to face me when you speak so I can read your lips." Brandon's smile tightened. He turned toward her slightly, his words slow and exaggerated as if she were a child. "Oh, right. Sorry, I didn't know." The evening deteriorated from there. Brandon ordered for both of them without asking what she wanted. He kept checking his phone between courses, his attention drifting to every corner of the restaurant except toward her. When Chloe tried to share stories about her graphic design work, he nodded absently, clearly not comprehending or caring about her words. Halfway through the main course, Brandon's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and stood abruptly. "I have to take this call. Work emergency." Chloe watched him walk toward the restaurant's entrance, phone pressed to his ear. Minutes stretched into 10, then 15. The waiter approached with a sympathetic expression, placing the check on the table. Chloe's stomach dropped as she reached for it, but the waiter shook his head and pointed outside. Through the large windows, she saw Brandon climbing into an Uber, his phone still clutched in his hand. He never looked back. The humiliation burned through her chest like acid. Chloe felt the familiar sting of tears, but refused to let them fall in public. She reached for her purse, determined to pay for the meal he had ordered and escape this nightmare. "Excuse me, miss." A tall man with dark hair and striking gray eyes appeared beside her table. He wore a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that screamed wealth without being ostentatious. His hands moved gracefully as he signed. "I saw what happened. I'm sorry that man was so disrespectful." Chloe's eyes widened. He was signing. Fluent, natural ASL. "My name is James Hartford," he continued, both signing and speaking so she could read his lips. "I was dining alone at the bar and couldn't help but notice your date's appalling behavior. Would you allow me to join you for dessert? No pressure, no expectations. Just two people enjoying good food and conversation." Chloe studied him carefully. James Hartford. The name triggered recognition. She had read articles about him, the reclusive tech billionaire who had revolutionized accessible technology. His company, Harmony Tech, had created groundbreaking software that helped deaf and hard-of-hearing individuals navigate a hearing-dominated world. "You know ASL," she signed, still processing this surreal turn of events. "My younger sister, Rachel, is deaf," James explained, his signs fluid and expressive. "She taught me that communication isn't about sound. It's about connection, understanding, and respect. 3 things your date clearly lacked." Despite her emotional turmoil, Chloe felt a smile tugging at her lips. "Dessert sounds nice." James gestured to the waiter, who brought menus and cleared away the awkwardness of the abandoned meal. As they studied the dessert options, James kept his attention fully on Chloe, making sure she could see his face clearly whenever he spoke. "Tell me about your work," James signed. Nina mentioned you're a graphic designer when she set up the date with Brandon. Chloe's hands moved expressively as she described her passion for visual storytelling. James listened intently, asking thoughtful questions about her creative process and the clients she worked with. For the first time in years, Chloe felt truly seen by someone outside the deaf community. I'm working on a project for a nonprofit that supports deaf children, she shared, her signs becoming more animated with enthusiasm. We're creating an app that teaches ASL through interactive games and stories. The goal is to make learning accessible and fun. James leaned forward, genuine interest lighting his features. That sounds incredible. What challenges are you facing? With the project? They talked for over an hour, dessert plates forgotten as the conversation flowed between them. James shared stories about his sister and the inspiration behind Harmony Tech. Chloe found herself laughing, truly laughing, for the first time all evening. As the restaurant began preparing to close, James walked Chloe outside. The night air was cool and refreshing after the warmth of the restaurant. Thank you for this evening, Chloe signed. You turned a disaster into something memorable. James smiled, a genuine expression that reached his eyes. The pleasure was entirely mine, Chloe. I hope this isn't the last conversation we have. He handed her a business card with his personal number. No pressure, he signed again. But if you'd like to meet again, I'd be honored. Chloe clutched the card, feeling hope bloom in her chest where humiliation had burned just hours before. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something extraordinary. Chloe stared at her phone screen, reading James's text message for the third time that morning. 3 weeks had passed since their unexpected dessert meeting, and they had been talking almost daily. Sometimes through video calls where they signed to each other, sometimes through long text conversations that stretched late into the night. She had learned that James was nothing like the wealthy elites she had imagined. He was thoughtful, curious, and genuinely passionate about making the world more accessible. You're smiling at your phone again, Nina signed from across their small kitchen, a knowing grin spreading across her face. Let me guess, James sent you another good morning message with terrible puns. Chloe laughed, setting down her coffee mug. He wants to meet today, says he has something important to discuss. Nina's eyebrows shot up. Important? Like what? I don't know. He was vague about it. 2 hours later, Chloe found herself in the lobby of Hartford Tower, the gleaming headquarters of Harmony Tech. The building itself was a marvel of accessible design. Visual alert systems flashed throughout the space. Screens displayed real-time captioning of ambient announcements, and she noticed several employees communicating in ASL. A professional woman in a navy suit approached her with a warm smile. Chloe Bennett? She asked, signing as she spoke. I'm Victoria Chen, James's executive assistant. He's expecting you. Please follow me. The elevator ride to the top floor felt surreal. Victoria made comfortable small talk, asking about Chloe's design work and complimenting her portfolio, which apparently James had shared enthusiastically with his entire executive team. James's office occupied the entire penthouse level, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering breathtaking views of the city. But Chloe barely noticed the scenery because James stood near his desk, his gray eyes lighting up the moment he saw her. Chloe, he signed, crossing the room quickly. Thank you for coming. I know this was short notice. The mystery was intriguing, she signed back, studying his face. He seemed nervous, which was unlike the confident man she had come to know. James gestured toward a comfortable seating area. Once they settled, he took a deep breath and began signing. I have a proposition for you. It's unconventional, possibly. Crazy, but hear me out completely before you respond. Chloe nodded, curiosity building. My company is bidding on a massive contract with the European Union to implement accessible technology across all their governmental systems, James explained. It's a project worth billions and could change the lives of millions of deaf and hard of hearing people across Europe. However, there's a complication. He paused, running a hand through his dark hair. My main competitor, Owen Mitchell, has been spreading rumors that I don't understand the community I'm trying to serve, that Harmony Tech is just capitalizing on accessibility without genuine connection to the deaf community. He's positioned himself as the better choice because his late wife was deaf. Chloe frowned. That's ridiculous. Your sister is deaf. You've built this entire company around accessibility. I know, but perception matters in these high-stakes deals. The EU selection. Committee wants proof of authentic commitment. James leaned forward, his signs becoming more intense. This is where my proposal comes in. I need to attend a series of galas, conferences, and meetings over the next 6 months. These events will heavily influence the committee's decision. And you want me to attend with you? Chloe signed, beginning to understand. More than that. James held her gaze. I want to hire you as my girlfriend. Chloe's hands froze mid-sign. Hire me? A contract arrangement, James clarified quickly. You would accompany me to these events, and in return, I'll pay you $100,000. Additionally, I'll provide full funding for your nonprofit app project, including a development team, marketing budget, and distribution resources. The number made Chloe's head spin. $500,000. Her nonprofit fully funded. It was more money than she had ever imagined having. Why me? She signed slowly. James's expression softened. Because you're brilliant, articulate, and passionate about accessibility. Because when you talk about your work, I see someone who genuinely cares about making a difference. The selection committee needs to see that Harmony Tech isn't just a business venture. It's personal. And honestly, Chloe, spending time with you has been the best part of my last few weeks. Chloe stood and walked to the windows, her mind racing. The offer was tempting beyond measure. That money could change her life. She could quit her frustrating job at the marketing firm, where her boss constantly forgot to include captions in meetings. She could focus entirely on projects that mattered. But pretending to be someone's girlfriend, even for a noble cause, it felt dishonest. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother, Patricia. Honey, the medical bills from Dad's hospital stay are piling up. I might need to take a second mortgage on the house. Don't worry, we'll figure it out. Chloe's chest tightened. Her father's unexpected heart surgery 3 months ago had devastated their family financially. Her parents had always supported her dreams, never making her feel less capable because of her deafness. They had fought for her education, her opportunities, her independence. She turned back to James. What exactly would this arrangement entail? James stood, moving closer but maintaining a respectful distance. Public appearances as a couple. Hand-holding, maybe some light affection for photographs. You'd have your own room when we travel. Complete privacy otherwise. The contract would clearly outline boundaries and expectations. Victoria has already drafted the preliminary agreement. And after 6 months? We part ways professionally. You keep the money, the app gets launched, and hopefully, Harmony Tech wins the contract that will help millions of people. James paused, his signs becoming gentler. Chloe, I know this is strange. If you say no, I completely understand. But I also think we work well together. These past weeks talking with you have reminded me why I started this company in the first place. Chloe thought about her parents struggling with bills, about the deaf children who could benefit from her app, about the millions of people across Europe who needed better accessible technology, about Brandon walking away from that restaurant. Without a backward glance, just another person who saw her deafness as an inconvenience. Maybe this was her chance to prove something, not just to James or the European Union, but to everyone who had ever underestimated her. I want to see the contract, she signed decisively. And I have conditions of my own. James's face broke into a relieved smile. Of course. Victoria? His assistant appeared with remarkable speed, tablet in hand. Chloe spent the next hour reviewing every clause, negotiating terms, adding stipulations about her creative control over the app project, and clear boundaries about their personal space. Finally, she picked up the electronic pen. Her hand hovered over the signature line as doubt flickered through her mind one last time. Then she thought of her father's weary face, her mother's brave smile, and the deaf children who deserved better tools to navigate the world. She signed, her name with steady strokes. James signed his name beside hers, and just like that, Chloe Bennett became the contracted girlfriend of billionaire James Hartford. "Our first event is tomorrow night," James signed, his expression both nervous and excited. "A charity gala for children's hospitals. Are you ready?" Chloe squared her shoulders, pushing down the butterflies in her stomach. "Ready?" The charity gala sparkled with elegance and excess. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across the ballroom while waiters glided between guests carrying champagne flutes and delicate hors d'oeuvres. Chloe adjusted the midnight blue gown. James had insisted on buying for her. Feeling simultaneously out of place and strangely empowered, James appeared at her side, devastatingly handsome in his tuxedo. He offered his arm and signed with his free hand. "You look stunning. Ready to convince everyone we're madly in love?" Chloe took his arm, feeling the solid warmth of him beside her. Over the past month, they had attended 4 events together. Each time, the pretending had become easier and somehow more complicated. James was attentive, thoughtful, and surprisingly funny. He made sure interpreters were present at every event, positioned himself so she could always see his face, and defended her fiercely when anyone treated her dismissively. The problem was that Chloe's feelings were no longer entirely pretend. "Mr. Hartford!" A booming voice cut through the ambient noise. A stocky man with silver hair approached, his smile sharp as broken glass. Owen Mitchell, James's rival. "How delightful to see you here. And this must be the lovely Chloe I've been hearing about." James's arm tensed beneath Chloe's hand, but his expression remained pleasant. He introduced them formally, signing as he spoke so Chloe could follow every word. Owen's eyes flickered to Chloe with barely concealed calculation. "Miss Bennett, I understand you're deaf. How fascinating that James found someone who fits his narrative so perfectly. Almost convenient timing, wouldn't you say, right before the EU contract decision?" The implication was clear and insulting. Chloe felt anger flash through her, but before she could respond, James stepped forward. "Owen, if you're suggesting that my relationship with Chloe is anything other than genuine, I'd be careful," James said, his voice dangerously calm while his hands signed forcefully. "Chloe is an accomplished designer and advocate who doesn't need to be reduced to a talking point in our business competition." Owen chuckled, unfazed. Of course. No offense intended. I'm simply observing that appearances matter in our industry. The EU committee meets next week, doesn't it? Curious timing for such a public romance." He walked away, leaving a trail of insinuation behind him. Chloe touched James's arm, drawing his attention. "He knows," she signed, "or at least suspects." James's jaw clenched. It doesn't matter what he suspects. What matters is the truth. And what is the truth? Chloe signed before she could stop herself. James stared at her, something intense and unreadable flickering in his gray eyes. Before he could respond, Victoria appeared with an apologetic expression. "James, the committee members just arrived. They want to meet Chloe." The next hour blurred into a series of introductions and careful conversations. The EU selection committee consisted of 5 members, 3 of whom were deaf or hard of hearing. They asked Chloe pointed questions about her work, her experiences, and her perspective on accessible technology. She answered honestly, passionately, describing her vision for the app and the barriers she faced daily in a hearing-centric world. Throughout it all, James remained close, his presence steady and supportive. She caught him watching her several times with an expression that seemed far too genuine for their contractual arrangement. Later, as the gala wound down, James guided her onto the balcony for fresh air. The city stretched below them, lights twinkling, like earthbound stars. "You were brilliant in there," James signed, leaning against the railing beside her. "The committee was incredibly impressed. I think we actually have a real chance at this contract." "That's good," Chloe signed, but her heart felt heavy. In 2 weeks, the contract decision would be announced. Win or lose, their arrangement would end. She would receive her payment, her app would launch, and James would return to his world while she returned to hers. The thought hurt more than she wanted to admit. "Chloe," James began, his signs hesitant. "These past few months have been unexpected. I proposed this arrangement as a business solution, but somewhere along the way, things changed for me." Chloe's breath caught. "James, don't. We have a contract. Clear boundaries. You don't have to say things to make me feel better about this arrangement ending." "I'm not saying this because of the contract," James signed intensely. "I'm saying this because every morning I wake up thinking about talking to you. Because when something interesting happens, you're the first person I want to share it with. Because watching you advocate for accessibility with such passion makes me want to be better, do better." He moved closer, his hands continuing to sign in the dim balcony light. "I know this started as pretend, but Chloe, my feelings stopped being fake weeks ago. I think I'm falling in love with you." Chloe's hands trembled as she signed back. "How can I trust this? How do I know you're not just caught up in the arrangement, the proximity, the performance of it all? Once the contract ends and real life returns, how do I know these feelings won't disappear?" "You can't know for certain," James admitted. "Just like I can't know for certain if you feel anything real for me beneath our contractual obligations. But Chloe, love is always a risk. Deaf or hearing, rich or poor, contracted or spontaneous. The question isn't whether we can guarantee the outcome, it's whether we're brave enough to try." Before Chloe could respond, her phone vibrated insistently. A video call from Nina. Chloe answered, and her best friend's frantic face filled the screen. "Chloe, you need to see this," Nina signed urgently, turning her phone to show a tablet screen. A gossip website blazed with a headline, "Hartford's hired Hart. Sources claim Billionaire's romance's contract arrangement." The article detailed their relationship with uncomfortable accuracy. Someone had leaked information about their contract. Photos accompanied the text, showing them at various events with captions questioning the authenticity of their affection. James read over her shoulder, his expression darkening. "Owen. He must have paid someone in my office to dig into my files." Victoria burst onto the balcony, her professional composure cracking. "James, the committee saw the article. They're demanding an explanation. If they think you manufactured this relationship to manipulate their decision, they'll disqualify Harmony Tech immediately." The weight of the situation crashed over Chloe. Millions of people depending on this contract, her app project, James's company reputation, all of it crumbling because she had been foolish enough to develop real feelings. "I'll fix this," Chloe signed decisively. She turned to Victoria. "Get me in front of the committee, now." 20 minutes later, Chloe stood in a hotel conference room facing 5 skeptical committee members. James stood beside her, but she had asked him to remain silent. This was her moment to speak. "Yes, our relationship began as a contractual arrangement," Chloe signed, her movements clear and deliberate as an interpreter voiced her words. "James offered me money to accompany him to events. I accepted because I needed financial help for my family and funding for my nonprofit project." She saw disappointment flash across several faces but continued undeterred. "But something neither of us anticipated happened. We connected as humans, not as business partners. James didn't just learn to accommodate my deafness. He celebrated it. He saw me as whole, capable, and valuable exactly as I am. He challenged me to think bigger about accessibility, to demand more from the world instead of accepting limitations." Chloe's hands moved with increasing passion. The contract brought us together, but it doesn't define what we became. James Hartford could have hired any deaf person to play this role, but he chose to build something authentic. Yes, it started transactionally, but love often begins in unexpected ways. What matters is what we built from that beginning. She turned to James, her heart pounding. I was scared to trust this, scared it was only real within the boundaries of our agreement. But James, I don't want the contract version of us anymore. I want the messy, uncertain, real version. I want to figure out what we are when there are no cameras, no committees, no performance required. James's face transformed with hope and joy. He signed back. Are you saying what I think you're saying? I'm saying I love you, Chloe signed, no longer caring about the committee or the contract or anything except the truth between them. Not because you paid me, not because of any arrangement, but because you saw me when the world taught me to. Be invisible. You made me believe I deserve to be loved exactly as I am. James closed the distance between them, his hands cupping her face gently. May I kiss you? He signed. Chloe nodded, and when their lips met, it felt nothing like the brief pecks they had exchanged for photographs. This kiss was real, deep, and full of promise. The committee members exchanged glances. The chairperson, a deaf woman named Margaret Foster, stood and began signing. Mr. Hartford, Miss Bennett, your honesty is refreshing in a world full of polished lies. This committee's goal isn't to judge your romantic choices, it's to ensure that any company we partner with genuinely understands and serves the deaf community. She paused, looking at James directly. What I saw tonight was a man who doesn't just understand accessibility as a business opportunity. You understand it as human dignity. And Miss Bennett, your passion for this community is undeniable. Whatever began as contract has clearly become something authentic. Margaret's expression softened into a small smile. The committee will render our final decision in 1 week. But I can tell you this off the record. Harmony Tech has demonstrated the exact partnership approach we're seeking. 3 days later, Chloe sat in her apartment with Nina, staring at her laptop screen. The EU contract announcement would drop any minute. James was in his office with Victoria, but he had insisted. Chloe watched from home, surrounded by people who loved her regardless of business outcomes. Her phone buzzed. A text from James. Whatever happens, we happened. That's what matters. Chloe's heart swelled. The past days had been intense. They had terminated their contract officially, not because the relationship ended, but because they wanted to start fresh without financial transactions between them. James had still funded her app project, but as an investor in her company, not as payment for her time. Nina grabbed her arm, pointing at the laptop. The EU press release loaded onto the screen. Harmony Tech has been selected as the primary accessibility technology partner for the European Union Digital Infrastructure Initiative. Chloe and Nina screamed, jumping up and down in celebration. Her phone exploded with messages. James, Victoria, her mother, and dozens of others congratulating them. But the message that mattered most came moments later. A video call from James. His face filled her screen. Gray eyes bright with emotion. We did it, he signed. But Chloe, this victory means nothing without you to share it with. Then it's good I'm not going anywhere, Chloe signed back, her smile so wide her cheeks hurt. 6 months later, Chloe stood on a stage at the International Deaf Conference, demonstrating her finished app to an audience of thousands. The app had launched to incredible reviews, already helping tens of thousands of deaf children learn ASL through interactive stories and games. In the front row, James watched her present, pride radiating from every inch of him. Beside him sat his sister Rachel, who had become one of Chloe's closest friends and a beta tester for the app. After her presentation, James met Chloe backstage. You were phenomenal, he signed. Ready for the next adventure? Always, Chloe signed back. What did you have in mind? James reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Chloe's breath stopped as he opened it, revealing a stunning ring with a center diamond flanked by two smaller stones in different colors. The three stones represent past, present, and future. James signed with one hand, holding the box steady with the other. Our past brought us together in unexpected ways. Our present is built on honesty, respect, and love. And our future? Chloe Bennett, I want to spend the rest of my life making sure you know how extraordinary you are. Will you marry me? Tears streamed down Chloe's face as she signed back. Yes, 1,000 times yes. As James slipped the ring onto her finger, Chloe thought about that devastating night at Celestial Restaurant. Brandon's abandonment had felt like confirmation of her deepest fears, that her deafness made her unlovable in a hearing world. But she had been wrong. Her deafness wasn't a barrier to love, it was part of what made her beautifully, completely herself. And James hadn't fallen in love despite her deafness. He had fallen in love with all of her, including the parts the world tried to label as limitations. Their love didn't erase the challenges of navigating between deaf and hearing worlds, but it proved that real connection transcended sound, that genuine understanding required more than ears, and that the most profound communications happened heart to heart. Later that evening, as they celebrated with friends and family, Chloe caught sight of a familiar face in the crowd. Brandon Walsh stood near the bar, having somehow secured an invitation to the conference after-party. He stared at her with obvious regret, probably recognizing her from recent news coverage about the EU contract and her successful app launch. James noticed and tensed, but Chloe simply smiled and shook her head. Brandon represented her past, a painful moment that had redirected her entire life trajectory. She bore him no ill will. Without that disastrous date, she might never have met James. Sometimes the worst moments led to the best destinations. Chloe turned away from Brandon and back to James, to Nina laughing with Rachel, to her parents dancing joyfully in the corner, to Victoria toasting with the Harmony Tech team. This was her community, her family, her future. And it was more beautiful than anything she could have imagined. James signed to her across the room, "I love you." Chloe signed back, her hands moving with absolute certainty. "I love you too. Today, tomorrow, always." In a world that often measured worth by what people could hear, Chloe had found someone who understood that the most important things were never spoken aloud. They were felt, signed, and lived in the quiet spaces where two hearts learned to beat as one. The sound of silence had never been so loud with love. The end.